Okay, so I just got done watching a video about British people reacting to Southern accent. so, um, mm, my family's technically Southern. Kentucky's technically considered the South. It's just the northern part of the South. My whole family's from Eastern Kentucky, and I'm from Western Kentucky. We grew up on the Indiana side of Louisville. And see, that's another thing is like Louisville, Kentucky. Most people say Louisville or Louisville, but if you're from Louisville, you say Louisville. so, yeah, I mean, it's just funny to watch people react to how we talk. Now, some of the Southern accents can be real thick and real hard to understand. I understand pretty much everything everybody said, but I grew up in that area. And, when I was 17, we moved to Tennessee. And for example, like Eastern Kentucky, my cousins and my aunts and my mom, papa, everybody, they're like, oh my God, Lindsay, oh my God. They have it's a very different accent from one side of the state to the other. And they're just like, and my cousins, especially my girl cousins, they're like, oh my God, you're so fabulous. You're fabulous. I mean, that's the thing they say. Whereas, um, that's the eastern part of Kentucky. But if you just go a couple, about, I don't know, 150 miles south to eastern Tennessee, 200 miles south, where we moved to, it's very, that's Dolly Parton. It's hard to imitate. Because I don't have much of an accent anymore. Not that I ever really had much of one, but I had more of one before. Years of corporate and customer service work, it kind of just gets knocked out of you a little bit. Um, and when people, but when, I always say Louisville the same, and every time I say Louisville, everybody looks at me like I'm just like gargling marbles in my mouth, pretty much. um, but Tennessee is more like, it's like the Dolly Parton accent. It's like, well, Daddy built the cabin, and oh my God, we didn't have nothing growing up, but we had love. I mean, that's how Tennesseans in that area talk. She grew up in the Smoky Mountains, and we lived not very far from that. We lived in the Blue Ridge Mountains. So, yeah, it's I mean, and I'm sure my accent's been shaped by that as well. I didn't live in Tennessee for that long. I was there from 17 to 24. So I mean a few years, but my accent was already pretty well formed by the time we got there. Um but it's just funny to listen to watch British people react to real Southern accents. And I've seen some British people like British actors tackle the British accent or the Southern accent. It's horrible. It's just horrible. Oh Lord, it's just and like I'm not even religious, I'm a Buddhist, but I spent years in Japan and everything, but um I say certain things, like I say sweet baby Jesus all the time when I'm upset about something. I'm just like, sweet baby Jesus, good Lord. It's just how we talk. Um, Something very common in the South, it runs pretty prevalent throughout the entire South, is like, bless your little heart or bless your heart. Thing is like I'm born and raised there, so if you say that to me, that I take that offensively. That's a very offensive thing to say to me. No, I realize somebody not from the South may not fully realize that. But if you say that to me, I know what it means and I take it offensively. I'm just like, no. I'm about to show you what you can bless. I'm just not a big fan of, um, because it's real sarcastic, but it's like covered in a fucking pound of Southern sweet tea. You know what I'm saying? It's real backhanded. And not a fan. I had a psychologist say that to me once. She's like, "Bless your heart." And I don't think she meant it that way, but I was raised in the South, and in the South they mean it that way. And I almost didn't go back to therapy because I mean it offended me so bad. I was just like, I know I took me a minute to come to, and I realized, she didn't realize it meant that, but no. My cousins are very likely to say wash rag instead of wash rag, or washcloth. They'll say wash rag, things like that. They're just, except it's more like wash rag, Lindsay. That's how my family talks, my entire family. You would never know we're related because I grew up in Louisville, on the Indiana. They call it the sunny side of Louisville, Indiana. But, it's all right there, and and that area is specific because there's a Midwestern accent and there's a Southern accent. So some things I say very Midwestern and some things I say very Southern, especially because my whole family's from the eastern part of the state. So I have actually probably a little bit more Southern in me than the average person there does, because we spend a lot of time in Eastern Kentucky visiting family. And, yeah, I mean, it was just funny to watch British people react. They had no idea where anything in America is. They kept guessing Arizona. So just a heads up, if you're not from America, Arizona is in the West. That's like the Wild West, like, Clint Eastwood Wild Western movie. Like, it is right next to California, and it is hot as balls. It is like cactus and cacti and red desert, and it is the West. So it has nothing to do with the American South. And I would say probably the most difficult accent for probably for people. They picked out a very specific North Carolina accent, and they picked out Creole accents from Louisiana. And now me personally, I say New Orleans, whereas somebody from Louisiana would say Nolans, now, but a person not from the South, they would say New Orleans, I just call it New Orleans. But Louisiana takes it even that much further, because they have a very, very thick, very specific accent, the Creole. But it's just really funny because, I mean, if you start talking certain British accents, some of that stuff's really hard to figure out what they're saying. So, like, some of those real, real thick country British accents, you're just like, what the fuck? So it's funny to watch British people have the same reaction to American ones, I think. And, they said it best, they thought we all talk the same, and we don't. So, somebody from, say, Seattle or Portland, they will not talk anything like me. I would probably sound a certain type of way to them, even though my accent's not really thick. But, and I do have the benefit of having a little bit of a Midwestern in my accent. So, like my ex-husband, he has a little bit more Midwestern than I do because his whole family is from that area. His whole family's from Louisville on the west side of Kentucky and Indiana. So they have a lot more Midwestern in their accent than my family did. My whole family's from the eastern part of the state. It's all blood Crips, So, yeah, so his family, they say, like, he doesn't say cold. He says code. I'm cold. I'm owed. I need to fold the clothes. That's how my ex-husband talks. It's really funny. The way he pronounces his O's. Like, he didn't call me babe. He called me babes. pluralized it, even though it's just me. But yeah, it's just how he talks. It really is just how he talks. It's nothing more. I didn't read into it more than that. I think some people did. That's a different discussion. But no, that's just how my ex has. That's how Joe talks. But yeah, like after we were divorced, he called me babes one time. I looked right at him. I was like, I am not your babes. Yeah, those days are over, buddy. You don't want to know what I call him. Yeah, but my whole family, like my parents just called it. That's a very common thing in the area, both sides of the state and the whole area. Is we don't really call each other baby. Little kids, yeah, be like, oh baby, come here, but when you get bigger, everybody calls each other babe. So my parents called each other babe. My parents called all three of us girls babe. My ex-husband called me babes. I called him babe. We very rarely use anybody's real first name. So we might use the abbreviated form. So like in my family, like there's Courtney, Lindsay, Whitney, but my older sister's Court, I'm Lynn or Lenny, and my little sister's Wit, or Witty. I call her Wee Wee, but that's my nickname for Whitney is Wee Wee, or Whitney Wiener Schnitzel. It's an inside joke, but yeah. So, and then Courtney's Court, and I'm just Lynn or Lenny. But or with my papaw, like I said, my papaw, he's from the eastern side of the state. He's so country, he couldn't say Lindsay. He called me Lindy because he was too country to say Lindsay. So, I mean, that's what you're dealing with. My family would probably be very difficult for some of you all to understand. Not all my family, but some of my family members, you probably have a really hard time understanding how they speak. I was really disappointed because they got all the hints in the world for my family's home state. They were talking about steamboats and horse racing and bourbon. And it's just like, you don't know the Kentucky Derby, the most famous horse race probably in the world. I mean, it's just like, I grew up, 20 minutes from Churchill Downs. I used to live a mile away from Churchill Downs, I mean, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's baffling because, I mean, that is literally, that is the most famous horse race in the world. And I am not a particular major fan of my home state and my home city. So I am not a fan of Louisville, Kentucky. Don't get me wrong. There are some good childhood memories. There are some really good ones. And it was a great place to grow up for me, especially in the 80s and 90s. I was an 80s child. Most of the 90s, I was preteen teenager. So, because I was born in the early 80s. My little sister, she's the last kid, and she was born in 85. So, as far as like my family goes and that area goes, during that time it was a great place to live. It was and when we moved to Tennessee, the area of Tennessee we lived in, it was a great place to live. We had a nice house in both places and went to good schools, made good grades. We were normal in that aspect. And yeah, and don't get me wrong, like by the time we moved to Tennessee, it was right before my junior year. It was the summer before my junior year in high school. And I finished out high school in Tennessee. I graduated from Tennessee. But I was born and raised in that area my whole life. I went to the same school system my whole life until we moved. And um my mom, she was like the preschool teacher at our church in our town and everything, you know. I mean, we were well established in the area. We had a 40-acre farm in Indiana. It's baffling because Louisville, it's Kentucky. You have to remember it's Kentucky. So even though you're in Louisville, and it's a decent sized enough city. I mean, it's not a major city, but it's got a scene. It had a bigger scene. It's actually seems smaller now. But let's see. We grew up 20 minutes from Louisville on the Indiana side. It was country. Like you never know there was a major city 20 minutes down the road. Like we had a 40-acre farm, you know, everybody around us had major acreage and farms and all that shit. You know, and we had 3 acres of it was our yard. And we had an in-ground pool, we had half a basketball court, we had a big ass barn, plus our house, and a big ass garage by the pool. And we had this giant field separating our backyard. Like it was our house, the pool, and then some backyard, and then there was this giant field, and then it goes into woods, which was still our property. And then my dad made this giant trail with the four-wheeler. And because he went four-wheeling all the time, and he made a trail from the backyard to the woods through the field with a four-wheeler, and he carved out a trail through the woods because we had a pond back there and you could go fishing. And all our neighbors, they would come back and go into our part of the woods to go deer hunting and everything. And then, they would give us deer meat and stuff. So I grew up on deer chili and deer burger, all that shit. And trust me, venison, as some people call it, it's an acquired taste. Not many people are used to eating deer meat. It is very gamey. I mean, I can eat it, but we make like summer sausage out of deer meat, and you just eat sausage, cheese, and crackers. And not many people can eat that. It's a very, very acquired taste. My dad was more of a bird hunter. He used to go on these crazy boy trips out to Kansas and all those areas and go quail hunting. He also liked to go. He was also an avid fisherman. I'm talking serious stuff. Like his friend had a boat, and they would go into the Gulf of Mexico and deep sea fish in the Gulf of Mexico. He chartered a boat when we lived in Alaska, and they went him and my ex-husband went deep sea fishing in Alaska. So I mean, he was like a hardcore fisherman. So yeah. My dad spoiled my ex-husband rotten. He took him deep sea fishing in Alaska. When we got out of the military, we spent the last year of our marriage in Indianapolis, because we moved back home, but he got better job opportunities up in Indy. So we spent quite a bit of time up there, and we had a nice little place up there, and my dad took him to the Indy 500. I mean, it was, my ex-husband was really truly spoiled by my family. Spoiled rotten. So yeah, I digress. I went way off on a tangent. Oh, but when we moved to Tennessee, by the time we moved to Tennessee, when I was getting ready to start my junior year, I was ready to move. Like my parents came, my dad came home, and my mom and dad's kind of sat us down. There was like, we're going to be moving to Tennessee. And my brother had already lived there with his ex-wife and two girls. I don't know if Cassie was born yet. Yeah, she was born. Yeah, Cassie was there. Um, so we actually, they had a really cool house in Tennessee, and then we actually got a house right across the street from them, and it was a really nice house too. And so, when we got there, we already had like family and everything there. So it wasn't like we just moved to this place and we didn't know anybody. My brother was already living there. And at the time, I was pretty close to my ex-sister-in-law, his ex-wife. And, I babysat his girls a lot and all that shit. But I was ready to move. I was just, I got along socially in school up until about ninth grade. And then I just had a really hard time because how our school goes is from kindergarten to sixth grade is elementary school. And all my childhood friends from there, we all went to the same. Then you go to junior high, which is 7th and 8th, and then there's senior high, which is 9th through 12th. And we went to junior high all together, and they went to senior high with me as well. But junior high, we started dispersing because other schools in the area would go to the same junior high, same high school. So it's like, 10 different schools coming together in one school. And so you meet new people. And not only that, but your coursework is a lot more intense. You're really, really expanding your mind, and you're learning a lot of new things and meeting a lot of different people. And we all just started branching off into different areas. And then ninth grade, I had pretty much all but lost all contact with all my old grade school friends. And I was friendly with people, and I met my ex-husband during that time. I was in ninth grade when I met my ex-husband. And I was having a really rough time at home and a really rough time at school. And this was, late 90s, we moved into Tennessee in the year 2000. And this is all really late 90s, 2000. And I don't know. It was not a time where, like, if, a kid was struggling at school, that they really thought to look deeper into it other than, oh, they're just lazy. Oh, they're just this, they're just that, because it wasn't really that. Because, they didn't put two and two together because, like, 5 out of we had 7 periods in that particular school. We had 7 different classes that we had to be in, and each class was like 50 minutes long or something. And it was a lot, 7 classes and 7 different courses to keep up with for each semester is a gauntlet. But 5 out of 7 of them, I would be, making A's and B's. And then, but, you have when you have that much coursework, you have to start going, okay, what do I sacrifice here? You know what I mean? So I was just like, Jesus Christ. When we moved to Tennessee, they had your first semester, you have 4 courses, and each class was like an hour and a half long, or maybe a little bit longer. And then the next semester, you have 4 other classes at the same scheduling. So you ended up with 8 courses, whereas at Floyd Central, we had 7 courses and you did them all year long. So you actually ended up with more courses under your belt with half the stress. So it made way more sense and I excelled a lot better with that kind of coursework. And areas where I was struggling, mostly math was where I was struggling at Floyd Central. By the time we went to Science Hill, I started excelling at math and science a lot better because I had more time to focus on coursework and ask for help and more time in class and all that fun stuff. Yeah, Floyd Central's coursework system, but when I was there, was deeply flawed. So I actually liked my school experience better. Also, that is a time of nostalgia for me. So, like, that was when, like, the Harry Potter books were becoming really big. And that's where we discovered Harry Potter, was when we moved to Tennessee. So that's when I read all the books. That's when I started reading all the books. And the movies were coming out around the same time. So my parents actually went with us to go see the first two movies. So yeah, because I was like a much older teenager when all that was going down. That was also when I had already read Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. But that's when all the Lord of the Rings movies were coming out each Christmas. And we spent 3 different Christmases going to the movies at Christmas time to go see those movies. We went, and the Harry Potter movies would come out around Christmas time, that area, and except for the last ones, but that was later on. But like the first few movies came out around Christmas. So, you would go see Harry Potter, you go see Lord of the Rings. That was a very good time for cinema. And, like they were really heavy hitting on the trilogies and all that fun stuff. So that was like a time of like a very nostalgic time for me. I had more friends at that school. And yeah, so I mean, I was just like, and like I had a lunch buddy, like another girl. My junior year, she was a sophomore. She had just moved in from Virginia, Dorothy, and we would eat lunch together every single day. The whole entire first year, we ate lunch together every single day, me and her. I mean, she was my lunch friend. I mean, like. And it didn't matter like who else I made friends with or what table they were sitting at. I always made sure to eat with her every single day. It was just me and her, and we would sit there and chill and talk about our hometowns and how we feel about the new place and things like that. And yeah, so I mean, like, also Science Hill, their school lunch was better. You think that doesn't matter, but it does. Like once a week, Papa John's would come in and they would serve Papa John's pizza. So you could get Papa John's pizza once a week. They had better school options, a lot more fun food. Whereas, don't get me wrong, they had plenty of healthy options too. But whereas like Floyd Central, it was, microwaved hash browns and mystery meat, that kind of thing. It was definitely lunch lady land. But yeah, the school meals were better where we're at Tennessee. Also, that particular area of Johnson City, it is nowhere near the size of Louisville. But at that time, we were 10 minutes drive away from what most teenagers do: the movie theater, go to the mall, go out to eat. It's all right there in one condensed area. And for my age at the time, it was perfect. And at that time, the mall had all the big stores. We had Abercrombie, Hollister, American Eagle, Express, all the big stores that everybody wanted to shop at. And that was my first job, was mall jobs there. So I worked at American Eagle and Hollister. But And that's the thing though, is like, that was the thing, that was what was in fashion back then. In 2000, everybody was wearing American Eagle and Abercrombie and Hollister. That's how you were fashionable and middle class. So yeah, I mean, I wore that a lot. Obviously Hollister, because I worked there at American Eagle, but I had a lot of Abercrombie too. But your whole closet express, your whole closet's filled up with it. If you're just an average middle class girl back in 2000, and you're reading Harry Potter, you're going to the Harry Potter movies, you're going to Lord of the Rings movies, the big romantic comedies, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days, What Women Want, all those, Sweet Home Alabama, those were all like big, huge movies back then. 8 Mile, that was a big movie. Yeah, so I mean, it was a very interesting time to be. Now, there was specific types of girls, like, they wore like the Von Dutch hats, and they had Tara Reid bleach blonde hair and the messy eyeliner, and they poured foundation on their skin, made themselves look orange, and the fake tanner and the tanning beds. And there was a very specific looking type of girl. It wasn't very prevalent in that area. There were a few, but yeah, the more popular girls growing up in those areas, you're wearing the Abercrombie, the Hollister, the American Eagle, more natural makeup, more natural hair. Yeah, it just wasn't that big a deal. I find the area to be a lot more radicalized than it was back in 2000. Like, it almost felt more modern back in 2000 than it does now, if that makes any sense. And that's just the thing, is like, Bush was president then, and I kind of blame, the a lot of the Trump politics. It's only made it worse, especially the last 10 years or so. Um, uh, because, like, you go to the mall there now. Now malls all over America are failing. I grew up in that area where being a mall rat was normal, so there's like some nostalgia connected to it. I don't really prefer to go to the mall much anymore. I mean, you have to sometimes, but yeah, like, if you go to the mall there now, there's still a few stores. There's the Hollister still there, the American Eagle still there, the Buckle. We used to shop at Buckle all the time. Buckle's still there. And then they have their regular stores like Journeys and stuff, and they have their version of Dillard's, which is called Belk. And they have a Dick's Sporting Goods, all that shit. But they like took out the Express, they took out the Abercrombie, which Abercrombie, I watched the Netflix documentary, and Abercrombie definitely went down the drain, especially after the CEO made all those comments about women's bodies and stuff. You have to remember, in year 2000, all that era, I was very thin. When you're 20, especially back then, I mean, I was a size 0. There was a time where I was working out so much that I got down to a 00 in Abercrombie. That is thin. And I wasn't like starving myself. I was nothing but muscle. So, because I was working out crazy. I was eating like crazy too. But I mean, your metabolism at 20, if you're working out a lot, and I'm tend to lean thin, on the thin side anyways. So I'm more like my dad in that area. Like, my dad has always just been a really tall, lean guy. I don't have his height, but I always leaned thin like he does. And yeah, I mean, I was working out so much and working so much that at 20, 21, I mean, I was a 00 at Abercrombie. I mean, I was thin. So I looked amazing. So yeah, I mean, I want my 20-year-old body back for sure. But who doesn't? Uh, do I want to be 20 again? No. Because older, somewhat wiser, hopefully that kind of thing. But I think what I miss about that time is I have very, very deep nostalgic feelings. I have very deep feelings of like the vibe of in general, of that time. Even though like it is Tennessee, it is Kentucky, it is conservative, and my family very much isn't. There seemed to be more acceptance. There was less of polarization in the country. People weren't so one or the other. People were a lot more middle ground. It seemed a lot more sane back then. It was just, obviously things were more affordable. The summer I started driving, I started driving November of 2000. It was right after my 17th birthday. I got my driver's license in Tennessee. And, yeah, I mean, gas was 98 cents a gallon, back in 2000. You know what I'm saying? Obviously, I don't think gas prices are ever going that low, but like even 7-8 years ago, my family was still living in Tennessee. You could get gas for under $2 a gallon. It's changed. You're hard pressed to find it under $3 a gallon anywhere anymore. So just in the last 7 years, it's changed that much, even in Tennessee. And one of the great aspects of that particular area of Tennessee is the cost of living is really nice. But even now, it's skyrocketed there, and I mean, it's still a better cost of living than a major city or other areas. But I mean, the cost of living there has, gone up way above what the average person there makes in income. So, yeah, I mean, it's just, it's a lot. It is a beautiful area. Kentucky's beautiful. That part of Tennessee in particular is really beautiful. It's up in the Appalachian Mountains. It's beautiful. The town we lived in, it was a really beautiful town. It still is. It's gotten a lot rougher over the last 26 years. From where we moved there to now, it's gotten a lot rougher. It's nothing like it was 26 years ago. And the cost of living has probably doubled, and people's incomes in the area haven't. So the homeless population there has exploded. The job market was already kind of depressed, but it was a lot better 26 years ago. And whereas now, if you're not working in healthcare, if you're not working over at Eastman or something in that area, the job market is a lot more squeezed than it used to be. And the people there are friendly, but to a point. And, everybody talks about Southern hospitality. That's a little bit misleading. So it's kind of like the bless your heart thing. They are polite, they are real sweet. They all, oh hi, how are you? Oh my god, let's get you something to eat, darling. That kind of thing. But at the same time, they say one thing and they say it one way, but they mean it another. And yeah, so it's just kind of like, Louisville in Kentucky, that part of Kentucky isn't quite as bad for that, especially Louisville. Louisville is a city, it's an actual real city. There's the whole west end of Louisville's the ghetto. I would not recommend going there, especially as a female. Black, white, whatever, orange, purple. I mean, just don't. I wouldn't recommend going there unless you absolutely had to. Yeah, I mean, I used to work for TARC in Louisville, which is the public transportation system. TARC stands for Transit Authority of River City. And I used to work in their admin offices, and their admin offices are deep in the west end of Louisville. So there's a street that goes all the way through downtown, all the way through main part of the city of Louisville called Broadway. It goes from one end of the city to the other. And the end I was on was all the way deep in the west end. And, we had this big giant fucking metal gate that was like 6 feet high surrounding the building. You go literally across the street. It was, maybe 500 feet from the property to Taco Bell. You have to order your order at Taco Bell through bulletproof glass. So if that tells you anything. That's how rough the west end of Louisville is. So yeah, like I've been out to LA many times. You don't really see that type of stuff in LA, even like deep in downtown LA, rarely, but not even LA is that bad. Maybe deep, deep, deep in the ghetto. But yeah, like, I mean, the west end of Louisville is rough, real rough. And that's another thing, is Kentucky is one of the poorest states in the country. And when you mix ghetto with poor, like that level of poor, I'm talking rough ass motherfuckers. So, I mean, real twisted, real dark shit. So I tend to not go down that route. I don't go to the West End. The only time you go to the West End is if, like, I had to work there, or there is a place called, the best chicken in Louisville is in the West End. It's called King's Wings. And it's the best fried chicken you've ever had in your life. Obviously go in the daytime, but yeah, and go with somebody. But yeah, I mean, that is probably some of the best fried chicken you'll ever. And Louisville is known for that, for their independent local fried chicken chains. Obviously KFC, but there's local mainstays that have been in the city for years. There's another place called Indies, a few other places. I prefer King's Wings above them all. That is the best place to get deep fried chicken. But yeah, I mean, you can't go to Louisville and not get deep fried chicken. I mean, what are you doing? But fried chicken and mashed potatoes and all fixins is, that's Kentucky food. I don't know. It's just really interesting to see people, react to how my people at my family talk. I have a little bit of an accent. It's not that bad. I mean, if I go out west, it's a lot more apparent because they all talk like this. Oh my god, I'm from like California. I mean, it all sounds like Valley Girl to me. So yeah, now if you go up further north, like Portland and Seattle and all that, it's not as bad. It's nothing like that. But yeah, but California is very specific. Um, and living in Tokyo for years, living in Alaska for years, living in Utah for years, you lose more and more of your accent. So that's why a lot of people don't, like, when I go to Kentucky, a lot of people have a hard time believing I'm from there, or my family's from there, because I don't talk like them. Even Louisville, that's the only way they know I'm from Louisville, is how I say Louisville, because yeah, most people, I mean, I really don't have that. I don't have their accent anymore, because I mean, I just spent so many years traveling with the military, and I've spent so many years traveling as an adult after, and you just lose it. I never had a Tennessee accent. That Tennessee accent is real. It's a lot thicker. It's a lot more sweet. It's a lot more southern. Whereas Kentucky's more twangy and it's a little bit more sharp, you know. Um, mm, but yeah, I mean, it was definitely like a really good time, 2000, 2001, 2002, all that time. Um, and that's when like reality TV started getting big, and I don't care who you are. At that time, everybody was kind of watching because we were all just kind of like, what is all this? It's like when Survivor came out. And then, like, for teenage girls such as myself, in early 20s, late teens, early 20s, you know, Laguna Beach came out, The Hills came out, and then Real Housewives and America's Next Top Model, which, I mean, that's a huge piece of conversation right now because of the documentary coming out from America's Next Top Model. And I used to watch that show. And when I moved to Japan back in 2008, we didn't have normal TV there. We had American TV because we lived on base, but they didn't show things like America's Next Top Model on military cable. So I just had my iTunes account, and I would purchase the show once a week when it was during the season, and it would drop. So it would air one night and it would drop the next day on iTunes. This is 2008 iTunes. And Real Housewives, American Next Top Model, Rachel Zoe Project, all those shows, I would purchase the show after it dropped. So for like, if it came out in America on, say, like a Wednesday night, for me, it would come out on a Thursday morning. So yeah, plus the time difference and all that shit. So, and I would purchase the shows on iTunes, and I remember, after about season 9 or 10 of America's Next Top Model, I stopped watching. I just felt like it became repetitive. It was obviously offensive. I felt like I'd outgrown the show after so many cycles, and it's just like, you seen in a few cycles, you kind of seen them all. And how they were treating girls, even back in 2008, 2009, that was really, anybody with 2 ears and 2 eyes could see, how toxic the show had become. So yeah, I mean, I remember like after about season 10 or so, I stopped purchasing the show. I stopped watching, and I just lost interest entirely. And my speed became more like Rachel Zoe Project and the Real Housewives. I still love Real Housewives. Obviously, Rachel Zoe is on Housewives now. She's not on the Rachel Zoe Project, which I felt like was a really good transition for her. But Rachel Zoe Project ended well over 10 years ago. And that was also a really good time in a very different way. I was living in a different country. I was newly married. We didn't have our kid until we were married for 3.5 years. So we spent a really long time being married, just being married. So, yeah, I mean, we didn't like start having kids right out the gate or anything. And, we were traveling the world. We were doing all these crazy things. So that was a really good time in a very different way. It was lonely. Military life, especially for a military spouse, is incredibly lonely anyways. It just is. It's just it's just the nature of the beast. When you're moving all the time, you don't really have time to like make really deep, super deep connections with anybody. And, when your spouse deploys, like say somewhere in the Middle East, life or death is in your face every day while they're gone. And that's a really hard thing to deal with. So that's a really hard way to live a life. But it was a really good time too. We had a lot of fun. And we had all these brand new experiences and living in the other side of the world. Just being two kids from Louisville, and we're on the other side of the world and we're having all these crazy experiences. I mean, it was like living on the moon. We were just like, whoa. Because we were 24 and 25. And my dad, his job required him to travel all over the United States for 40 years. And trust me, when we were in school, we were in that truck with them. I traveled America and a few other places, and I've been Bahamas and Mexico and Canada. But it's nothing like Japan. That's a totally different ball game. I was already really well traveled, but yeah, I mean, and that's another thing is like, people from Kentucky and Tennessee and all that, a lot of those people, they're born there, they're raised there, they live there their entire life. They might travel for vacation, but they come back in a week. I was born into traveling, heavy, deep traveling, and have done so my entire life. And that's pretty rare for anybody from America. So, so it's a different mindset, it's a different culture, a different lifestyle entirely that a lot of people just don't understand. I am more in a place now where I'm wanting to settle down and have real roots, but I've tried to do it in Louisville and go back to my hometown and do all that shit, and it just doesn't work out. I guess maybe so many years away and living all over the world and all, I'm just too different. I'm not the uh I'm not the sweet little southern girl I used to be, southern midwestern girl I used to be, um you know I'm a very worldly woman. A lot of people in those areas aren't. And they just, when I start talking about certain things, they just don't get it. So, it just goes wire right over the heads. And I can't blame them. But at the same time, they're so small-minded that they just don't have the mental capacity to understand that, I lived a different type of life. And that doesn't make me wrong. It doesn't make me crazy. It just means I lived a very different lifestyle and I have a very different mindset. And it's not theirs, but they're just not very accepting. In those areas, they have a lot of small, narrow-minded people, just tunnel vision. And, but if you try to tell them that, that doesn't work out either. So, and it is kind of like that, a lot of people, in those areas in the South, American South, it's just tunnel vision on their viewpoint. And anything that's foreign to what their what normal is seen as a threat or an enemy, when it really isn't. You know, and they just don't get it. But and sure, I was well traveled and worldly in a sense, you know, when I was 20, but nothing compared to now. You know, I mean, nothing compared to now. And you know, we still had my parents, their house was like home base and, you know, deep roots with my family in that sense. You know, I moved out pretty much right after high school. I was 18 when I graduated high school. I moved out not long after, about a year after, and got my first apartment and everything. And in the same city, you know, but yeah, I mean, my parents almost took that as license for them to leave. And I resented them for that because I really think they should have just kept the house they were in and stayed. And because it was a really nice house. And we had lived there for, I don't know, my family lived there for about 4 years, maybe. And it was a nice house in a nice area, and it was quiet. And, you know, we had like these epic Christmases there and all this other shit. And my parents just like flopped on it all completely and got this stupid apartment in a city that was 30 minutes drive away. And it was just, where they moved to was a complete headache. And, rather than, because I was still living in Johnson City, they moved all the way out to Greenville. And I had my first apartment in Johnson City, and my little sister was still in her senior year of high school, and they moved all the way out to Greenville, and she wasn't going, you know, my parents already went through a fucking nightmare to get us into school in Johnson City. And, you know, she was in the middle of her senior year, so she had to come and live at my house and sleep on my couch, and I had to make sure she finished out her senior year and graduated. And because she wasn't going to school in Greenville she had all these friends, you know, because she started school in Johnson City at 9th grade, where I was a junior, she was a freshman. And she did her whole freshman year, or her whole high school career at Science Hill, from freshman to senior. And yeah, I mean, she formed really deep, close friendship bonds in her, you know, because you do sometimes in high school, you know. And she has a couple really good friends from high school there, and really close friends. And, you know, I mean, it's just like, you're not going to rip her out and make her go to a school for a semester and a half somewhere else and graduate there. I mean, that's just crazy, you know. I just made her go live with me. But you know, my parents were in a really bad place, and they were doing a lot of drugs. They were really heavy on pills, and their pill problem really put a major rift in our family for many years. It was devastating to our family. And so where I have a lot of nostalgia and good memories from that time, you know, where my parents are concerned, not so much. You know, I had more good times with like my little sister, my high school friends, that kind of thing. Not really. I really didn't. I don't have a lot of great memories from my parents at that time. during that time period, all the way up really till I got married and left, from about like a year, I guess right after I graduated high school, right around the time, like my last semester in my senior year, and when I graduated high school and all that. Around that time, all the way up till 24, from 18 to 24, I mean, I just wasn't really super close to my family, because I mean, I graduated high school June of 2022 or 2002, and I turned 19 3 months later, so it was just how, like, when I went to kindergarten in Indiana, it was just how, like, my birthday made it weird, so, like, if I had hit the mark a little bit earlier, I would have gone a year earlier, but, it's just my birthday messed me up. So I was older when I graduated high school. It's just birthday math, how schools do all that shit. I don't know. I don't really know anymore. I don't know how they do it all now, but, because in real all honesty, if I'd been born like a month or two earlier, I would have been the class of 2001, not the class of 2002. So, and I would have been 17 when I graduated. Like, most kids are like 17 or the early stages of 18. They're not almost 19. My birthday really messed me up. But, yeah, I mean, like, it was just a really, really bad time for me with me and my parents. And the thing is like, they never really repaired that, because it was still pretty bad by the time I got married. It wasn't as bad, but it was still pretty bad. And, I think in the end, when I was 24, my little sister was living in Knoxville. She was going to University of Tennessee. My parents were still in Greenville. My older sister at that time was in Florida, like almost in Miami, before they moved out to California. And I was moving to Japan. I lived in Japan. Courtney was in Florida. Whitney was in Knoxville. And, it was just them. So I don't know if that's when they started having some more of their epiphanies to clean their act up and all, and they did. But, it was after we all had left, to go off and live our own lives. Whitney eventually came back. But that was only because she got pregnant. That's the only reason why she came back. But I mean, once her kids she had 2 boys in Tennessee, but once she had her 2 boys to a certain age, she moved right back to Indiana, right back to where we're from. Courtney still lives in California. But yeah, I mean, my mom, she died in Indiana. My dad's up in Indiana. My whole family eventually went back to where we're from. My parents were in Tennessee for about 22 years, 23 years. And they eventually got out of that place and they got a really nice house in Greenville. And they lived there for a long time. But, yeah, it was after everybody left. I think my mom was just like, my older sister started having kids, and then I had my son, and my little sister started having kids, so she wanted to have a house for all her grandkids to be at. That all being said, it just, it was still pretty bad by the time I got married and left for Japan. And, they never really repaired it. They just, it was always hard to be around them. My little sister, I guess she felt like she felt abandoned or something. Like she had a lot of resentment towards me because I left. But it's just like, listen, I got married. I have to my own life. You had no problem when I was still in Johnson City. You had no problem packing up and going to Knoxville and going to college and leaving me behind. You know, and it's just like, Courtney for damn sure had no problem leaving me behind and leaving me with our parents' mess. And my brother, the person that was living there when we first moved there for a few years, don't get me wrong, they were there for years, but then him and my dad had this major falling out. And about 2 or 3 years after we moved there, and then they stopped speaking and they haven't spoken like 20 years. And so my brother had no problems, like, not leaving us behind. My older sister, she moved out when I was 12 and she never looked back. I haven't hardly been around her since I was 12 years old. And Whitney did the same thing. I was still living in Johnson City, and she went from ETSU, which is a local college in Johnson City. She spent a couple years there, and then she applied at UT, and she was gone. She didn't care. She pieced out and left me behind. And that was a really hard time for me because I was probably about 22. And, my parents were in Greenville. I was still stuck in that Johnson City area. My brother and my dad had already fallen out. So I didn't have my brother or his family. My little sister was in Knoxville. My parents were 30 minutes, 45 minutes away in Greenville. It was just me. And, I was just like everybody had left me and nobody had a second thought about it. And then they all have all this resentment towards me because I got married and left not long after. And it's just what did you expect? You all didn't give a second thought about leaving me behind. And now everybody wants to have this chip on their shoulder because I left. And it's just you all left me behind, didn't give a second thought about it. Made me feel okay, I'm just chump change to you. So what the fuck do you care that I left? So, yeah, it's just you don't get to have it both ways. You're not going to just leave me behind and I'm off living my life, doing all these things and blah, blah, blah. And you're just stuck in fucking, Johnson City, which, Johnson City at 22 is boring. It's boring as fuck, because you're not I wasn't 17 anymore. I wasn't in high school, going to school every day and being surrounded by friends every day. And, on the weekends, going to the movies and going shopping and all this other stuff. And, it was boring, and not to mention, I moved out of my parents' home. I didn't have the disposable income I used to have. It wasn't shopping money anymore. It was rent money. It was stay alive money. It was eat money, and it's just don't get me wrong, things were a lot more affordable then. I could still go do things go to the movies and things like that, but it wasn't every weekend like it used to be, it was once a month maybe, and it was just it was on your day off if you're not sleeping all day because you're exhausted. Yeah, and Whitney, she was in college, and she was doing the UT Knoxville major university, state university thing. And, she was drinking her ass off and partying like college kids do. She wasn't calling me and having long conversations. I promise you that. My parents, they were on pill benders. They weren't calling me and having long, deep conversations with me. Seriously. And then what's worse is just I made sure my little sister graduated high school. I made sure she got through it all, and after high school, she went to ETSU and she was there for a few years after she graduated. And she was still around, and I don't blame her. Move off to bigger, better things. Sure, especially in your early 20s. Take every opportunity you can to expand yourself, to get the experience and the education you need. I fully understood it. It's just, it was just like she had me have my boyfriend at the time. He had a box truck. We packed up his box truck with all her shit and moved all her shit to Knoxville and helped her move. And we were there for like 2 days to help her move in. And then I barely heard from her again. Occasionally, occasionally talk. You have to remember this was 2005, 2006. So, it was Nokia brick phones. It wasn't, in Motorola Razors. It wasn't, where you have to press the button 3 times to get one letter. It wasn't iPhones. So, there wasn't a whole lot of texting. It was still a lot of phone calls back then. And, yeah, I mean, it was just, she did a lot of really shady things to me. She had no problem tearing my life apart. They didn't blink an eye to just every memory, every gift they'd given me, everything. They sold it and ripped my life apart. That was the first like major deep betrayal. My brother stole a lot of money from my dad, and they turned around and asked me to sell all of my stuff to make up for what he stole. And this is back in the time when DVDs were really popular, so I had like the entire DVD set of The Sopranos, like 15 seasons of The Simpsons on DVDs, all the Sex and the Cities. They took it all, sold it all on eBay. I got a guitar for Christmas when I was like 17. My dad got my sister one and he got me one. They sold my guitar. Sold all kinds of my shit right out from under me. All because my brother stole money. So yeah, I mean, I learned quick, don't be too attached to anything, especially when my family's around. So that's why the cease and desist are in place, because I don't need that in my life. Who the fuck needs that? Who the fuck needs to build up a life just to have termites like them come and tear it apart? So all because of other people's bullshit mistakes. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, you can trust my family as far as you can throw them, which ain't far. So, no, I mean, don't get me wrong. I had a lot of happy times with my family, and I have a lot of good memories. Um, at the same time, it's not worth it for me. It's not worth it for me to have a few more good memories, because my family are the type of people, like, no matter what they do for you, they're clocking that in their head to lord over you at some point. It's all just a manipulation. And, it's hard to accept that, because nobody wants to think of their family that way. But that's how they are. And they'll always do something to undermine me or hurt me or make me look stupid. Have me pay for their bullshit life decisions and choices at my expense. I just can't let them back in. There's just no way. My older sister, she's been deep in the MLM selling type culture for well over 15 years. We're clocking it at over 15 years at this point. She's been deep in that culture. and it's very, very obvious when you look at her. Oh,
Say hi, Tom.
her lips, I mean, it's just fish lips at this point. It's not even duck lips, it's fish lips. It's just fake tits. I mean, her natural hair color is my hair color. This is my natural hair color. This is every woman in my family's natural hair color. My little sister, her hair is still this color. She's got the same. She's down the rabbit hole, but not in that way. And her hair color, she's a more natural person. She's got, my hair color, and this is my mom's hair color. This is my older sister's hair color. She dyes it bleach, fried ass blonde. She's lived in California for 20 years. She's got fish lips, like the plastic surgery, over injected fish lips. It's like that. Fake boobs, fake tan. Just, she's got that. She doesn't even have the up to date Real Housewives looks anymore. She looks like Real Housewives from 10 years ago. That's how she still dresses. And Kourtney's very posy. She's always in every photo, and she does this look with her face. She goes, I have a hard time doing it because it's not natural for me to pose that way. And it's just how are you, my family? How are you, my full-blooded sister? No, I know nobody believes me, but you are, and it's just insane. Because to meet her and to meet me, you just be like, what the fuck? Because Whitney and I are a lot more similar in personality. Whitney and I we actually have similar majors in college. We have similar work. Whitney, she has a master's degree in accounting. I went for business, but I ended up turning my business career into collections litigation, which, there's a lot of accounting in that. I work accounts receivable a lot, which is major in accounting, but I took a lot of accounting classes in college. I hate accounting, but and my career isn't exactly the same as accounting, but it's in a similar area. I'm sure my little sister would have no problem picking up on collections, litigation, or law, or collections in general, or accounts receivable, absolutely not. She would fly through that. But collections and all that would instantly click in her brain. So we actually have similar thought processes in that area. My minor was psychology, hers was anthropology. So yeah, not the same, but not far off. My older sister, I don't know what she is. So, and Whitney and I are closer in age. Kourtney's 5 years older than me. Like I said, she left when I was 12 and she was an adult. And she never looked back. She came home to visit sometimes, and we went to go visit her sometimes, but really, she never looked back. And we weren't close before she left because she was a teenager and I was a preteen, and I was the annoying little sister. And, I think she still sees me that way. And it's just I'm not 12 years old anymore. And it's it's almost like she's frozen me in time, and it's just that is 30 years ago. That's really the last time I lived with Kourtney, was 30 years ago. Or been around her a lot. Seriously, she came in once a year to visit for a week. And she didn't call me a lot. She wasn't around much. And she really left me with my parents' bullshit, and nobody to help me. And they were off on benders, and I was raising Whitney. And Whitney is my little sister by not even 2 years. So we're a lot closer in age. We grew up together. We fight a lot worse. where Courtney and we just kind of don't care. I mean, we get catty with each other sometimes, but we just kind of don't give a fuck. Whitney and Courtney are close. Courtney has like this whole idea of being big sister to the baby sister. Whitney and Courtney are 7 years apart. And I don't know what their relationship is like now. I mean, just from knowing my family and looking at photos, and from a few conversations I've had with Whitney over the years before we got distanced in our relationship, I mean, Courtney's normal in California. I mean, California, I mean, it's not as normal as it was 10 years ago, but she's still relatively normal enough, for a Californian woman. She does amp it up a lot. But she's lived in California for 20 years. It's not like she's some zealot or anything. But from where we come from, also, Whitney and I are a lot more intellectual and have a lot more intellectual careers and mindsets and things like that. It's kind of embarrassing. I mean, anybody with 2 brain cells would be like, oh, she's in California she's a transplant for how many years, she's obvious. But, excuse me, but you see her coming in looking like that, and she's always wearing giant heels and some crazy California sundress, and she's like, oh my god, hi, I'm Courtney. And that's how she really talks. And it's fake, but that's how she talks to people. And she's like, oh my god, hi, I'm Courtney, what's up? Oh my god. That's how Courtney is. Oh my god, hi, I'm Courtney. Buy this curling iron from me, because you've never seen a curling iron curl before. Don't you want to look like Barbie? That's how Courtney is. It's a little embarrassing. I'm sure Whitney's mentioned it to me a time or two. I'm real vocal about it. So, and Courtney doesn't even get like the type of lawyers I work with and work for. Oh, I'm sure they got their fangs out. Whew. We have a childhood friend that Courtney grew up with. She's known since she was like 5. They went to the same Christian school together. She's a lawyer and up in Indy. And I've known her since I was born. Emily, I've known Emily since I was born. She's known me since I was literally born. And Whitney too. I've known Emily my entire life, or, we're not close now, but you know what I mean. And, Emily is like, intellectual corporate lawyer kind of person. And her and Emily were best friends. I mean, best fucking friends for years. And Emily is more like Whitney and myself and less like Courtney. And I don't know what she thinks. She probably is too polite to say. But Emily knows my family well. My family, we're all very blunt. We're all very like in your face about our opinions and how we feel and all the rest of it. And always have been. And we're just like, rah. And the whole family is. But Courtney, it's not that Courtney isn't. It's just that she's super fake about it at the same time. It's baffling. And you're just like, what Twilight Zone am I in? It's just like, how are you my full-blooded sister? What planet are you from? Oh my God. You're just like, ah. But, yeah, I mean, it's a little embarrassing. I don't just looking at some pictures over the last few years, you know, um, they seem kind of fractured. I can't say for sure, you know, because I haven't really spoke to them much, especially not on deep, heavy shit such as that. But, you know, Whitney's living her life one type of way, Courtney's living her life another type of way. And, you know, before Whitney got married and had kids, it worked, you know, because Whitney traveled a lot, you know, when she wasn't in school or working, you know, and she had the time for all that. And she had the time to entertain all of Courtney's bullshit. And, you know, you tolerate and you kind of believe a lot more bullshit when you're, you know, 24 and in college, you know, because she was, and when she was 24, she was still doing her master's degree. And, you know, and the world's your oyster. And Courtney at the time, you know, she had like this big giant California suburban home and it was real flashy and very Courtney. I never really pulled the wool over my eyes, but I can see how it did other people, you know what I mean? But because when you're coming into this giant, if you've ever been to California and the giant suburban homes, like the crazy ones, you know, they're huge and they're amazing, they're beautiful, and they have these giant open floor plans and this giant kitchen, and there's this giant family room that's all open floor plan, and then you still have a separate living room and a separate dining room, and it's like 3,000 plus square feet, and there's like 5 bathrooms and 5 bedrooms, and they're just massive, like mini mansions. And she had it decorated to the nines and all that bullshit. And yeah, she she got busted out on it. She foreclosed and lost a lot of shit, you know. And then eventually her marriage didn't last much longer after, you know. They have no problem. They have no problem slandering me. So, and this is just the truth. This is just the facts. They got busted out. And the thing is her ex-husband's mom died, and she never really liked Courtney that much anyways. But her ex-husband's mom died, and her ex-husband, his dad was a lawyer, and his mom was like a paratrooper in the military and all this crazy shit. And they're very well accomplished people from California. And her ex-husband, he was like regional manager of Yard House restaurants. Big deal, big enough, he still made a really good career for himself. And so his mom left him a pretty penny when she passed. They used a big chunk of it for the down payment on that house, and they foreclosed on it. I'm sure that was a massive, deep wound for him. I'm not saying he was entirely innocent. There's very rarely, just one guilty party in a marriage. It's kind of everybody's fault, but usually. And he did some things too, but that one had to sting. I know, like, how my ex-husband did me financially during our divorce. I will never, ever motherfucking forgive his ass for that shit. Ever. Ever. I don't care if he came up to me and proclaimed his undying love and gave me a blood oath and all this. I would never believe him again. I would never trust him in a million trillion years after what he did to me. Because you know what they kind of say, when somebody shows you who they are the first time, believe them. So, yeah. And it's just like, when I was married for a while. I was married for almost a decade. And we never missed bill payments. We had perfect payment history on our credit. We started out with 600 credit scores when we first got married. We ended our marriage at when he filed for divorce. We both had 750. He still has, I'm sure, good credit. I don't. He completely financially ruined me during the divorce and destroyed my credit. I mean, I'll never fucking forgive his ass. Ever. Ever. I mean, fucking ever. Never. He is dead to me in that regard. Dead to me. Once you hurt somebody that bad financially, you are dead to me. Or, and most people. That is a huge, huge no-no. And that's what I mean. Financial abuse is abuse. And he seriously financially abused me. And nobody seemed to care. And it was just baffling because he had me stay at home for 8 years. And when he filed for divorce, I had to go back out into a job market that I hadn't been in for a decade. And it's just like, nobody's going to hire somebody that's been a military wife for 8-10 years. You know, I mean, I had to start at the complete bottom. You know, and I was just like, yeah, I went to college and everything while we were married, but that counts for nothing. You know, and it's just like, fuck, you know, I mean, talk about a what the fuck do I do moment, because I still had all our marriage bills with my bottom of the totem pole income. I mean, I was fucking livid. And nobody seemed to care. Nobody seemed to understand. Nobody seemed to be willing to be realistic about the situation financially at all. And yeah, I mean, I was fucking out my mind with the shit. And you know, I went to go live with my parents for about 4 or 5 months after he filed. And that's in Tennessee. And he was living up in Indiana where his parents and all his family live. And at the time, he had custody of our kid. And he had me every single weekend driving up to Indiana Friday night. And then I had to drive back Sunday evening and then work Monday through Friday. And I did that every weekend for months. And then finally, I was just like, I have to get an apartment back up in Indiana. I can't keep doing this. This is insane. We have to start saving money. This is just crazy. You know, I'll just get a job up in Indiana. This is stupid. You know, makes a way more logical sense. We're getting divorced in Indiana. My kid's in Indiana. You know, better job market anyways. It just makes more sense. So I moved back up into Indiana, southern Indiana. And I mean, people just ran right all over me. And ran right all over my situation. And it's just like, why don't you go through a fucking divorce and then you tell me? Like, you know fucking shit about a divorce. Because a lot of these people that were coming at me, they were still married. And, you know, I was 31, 32 when I got divorced. You know, it took us a year to get divorced. And, you know, a lot of people I knew, especially from that area, like old childhood friends, they were still in their first marriage. They had never been divorced, you know, or they had never been married at all. So it's just like, nobody to relate to, and nobody was relating to me. And a lot of them, I think, were like still scarred because mommy and daddy were divorced. And it's just like, listen, I am not your mom and dad. And I'm real sorry your parents are divorced. That sucks, you know. But I'm actually going through a divorce, and I don't need all your mommy and daddy issues up in my divorce. Fuck you. And trying to talk sense into Joe about having a logical I tried to do mediation. Just completely shut my lawyer out, completely shut me out. You know, I tried to mediate the divorce and try to bring him to the table to reason about anything. Just complete insanity all the way around. And people like, you know, there were some people before it all went down, like I considered friends, you know, friendly enough, you know, that I knew in high school and everything. But we weren't anywhere close enough for them to have their nose that far up my ass and in my business. They were, I mean, I spent a majority of my marriage in Japan and Alaska. They weren't around my marriage. They don't know anything about it. I mean, it was bad. It was insane. Like how much everybody, including the justice system, threw me and my kid under the bus. Just fucking completely, and made it about everything it wasn't. They did not focus on the task at hand at all. It was just insane. And trying to keep my sanity during it all was just, it was really hard. I mean, it was really hard. I was on a very high dosage of Zoloft at the time. I mean, a very high dosage. Just to keep my head halfway above water sometimes. I mean, it was really bad. But yeah, I mean, and my older sister wasn't there. My little sister was for some of it. She was really angry about the divorce, but it's just like, listen, I'm not your mom, I'm your sister. This isn't your parents getting divorced, this is your sister getting divorced. And sure, I messed up, but everybody casually had no problem forgetting about the 8 years of fuck-ups Joe did towards me to lead up to the point. It all just magically went out of their head because I did one big mistake, but everybody forgot about he did a lot of big mistakes and a million little ones over the span of 8+ years, and nobody had anything to say about it. It just left me hanging with my one major one. I mean, what everybody did to me and said to me and all the rest of it's unforgivable. It just is. And I mean, I'm real serious about how I feel about that. And it's not to be shady. It's not to be hateful. But I mean, I went back to Louisville a few times over the past 10 years trying to make it work. And it just doesn't. It just doesn't work. Went back to Tennessee a couple times to try to make it work. It just doesn't work. For whatever reason, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't. And that's sad, But I mean, I'm just a very different person than any of them are. And I guess I don't know, maybe I just have too much world experience at this point, too much career, too much education. I mean, I'm way beyond all that now. And it's not that I don't know how to get down with it. It's not that I don't understand, because I grew up in it. Of course I understand it. I've worked and gone past such a level that it's just not me anymore. On that note, yeah, this all started out with accents, and yeah, it's funny how that goes. So, yeah, I mean, and I'm not trying to paint myself as some perfect little angel in all of it, I know I made a lot of mistakes and all of that, but at the same time, what I was going through mentally and at a divorce at the same time, nobody took it easy on me. I mean, and I've heard psychologists talk about how, narcissistic people or people with more narcissistic tendencies, I'm not going to diagnose my ex-husband or his family, but the shoe fits. And I can't diagnose him, but, from my personal experience, he has a lot more narcissistic tendencies. Psychologists and mental health professionals talk about how, they will destroy you and fuck you up in court. And he did, and he hurt me really bad, and he blackmailed me. He blackmailed my family, put me in an impossible situation, put my kid in impossible. I mean, what he did, the thing is what really frightens me is what he did to his own kid. Like the damage he's done to that kid. I mean, it's beyond infuriating. Like this severe fucking trauma that he's put that kid through. Just for no reason other than his own fucking bullshit ego. He could never ever let, and all the insane mistakes, mental health shit, you know, him threatening to commit suicide and all this other shit through the latter part of our marriage half the time. And me trying to keep it together and raise a baby. His mom begging me not to call the cops on him when he was literally threatening to commit suicide and all the rest of it. I mean, just terrorizing me. And I'm already exhausted. And people try to make me having a complete and just pretty much a total nervous breakdown and for pure exhaustion, you know, traveling all over the world, moving from Japan to fucking Alaska to Utah to Indiana with a baby. I mean, nobody took any of that into account. And then I have a husband that's rolling around on the floor threatening to commit suicide half the time on top of it. Nobody took any of this into account. I mean, I was just fucking exhausted. With no help. I didn't have help raising my kid. Nobody showed me any grace or mercy or empathy. Nobody gave a fuck. And it was just insane. It was insane to witness from everybody I ever knew. And all for them to turn around and call me racial slurs and all this other shit. And it's just like, you all had nothing to say about my money because I was holding the fort down while his ass was deployed. I was raising the kid by myself and I raised him well. I was holding it all down, had a beautiful home, and nobody had shit to say about my money because his money is my money when we were married. I don't give a fuck what you had to say about it because my money is never your fucking business. And nobody had shit to say about it when we were married, but everybody has all this interest in my money while I'm getting divorced. That's insane. And it's just like, fuck off. Who the fuck do you think you are? To come into my marriage and try to tell me about my fucking money. Try to tell me about my fucking kid. Yeah, I'll never forgive him. Never. So, word of caution, you know, if you ever go to Louisville, Kentucky, like I said before, go for Derby Fest, go for the Derby, the Oaks, whatever. Go have your bourbon time, your mint julep, watch a couple horses race, and get the fuck out. And as far as like the eastern part of Tennessee and the Smokies and all that area, go to your Dollywood and your Pigeon Forge and your Gatlinburg excursion and get the fuck out. Trust me. You aren't missing anything. You just aren't. And the job market there is just as fucked. It's a joke. So yeah, I mean that's where we're at with it. But I mean, you know, in the South, a lot of people say this is your moment to come to Jesus, and where my divorce is concerned, and my family, and a lot of that shit. You know, this is a lot of everybody's, you know, you're come to Jesus. I'm not religious. I don't mean that literally. You know, I'm just saying, you know, a lot of people are running their mouths about shit they had no fucking clue about. And then under the self-delusion that they know me and they know my marriage when none of them were around. It was insane. my little sister's friends, her friends, and sure, I was friendly with them, and I at the time before my divorce, I liked them. They seemed nice enough, I guess. But and I tried to be as friendly as I could with them, but they weren't like my close friends. They were her close friends, and it's just like they were trying to butt into my divorce, and it's just like, listen, I know you through my sister. Know your role in my life and back the fuck off. Who the fuck do you think you are? None of them were coming to visit me. One of her friends did. One. He came with Whitney when she came to visit me in Japan. But that's the only one. None of them came to Alaska. And I get not coming to Japan. It's expensive. It's a 14-hour flight. Japan's expensive. The flight's expensive. It's expensive. He was the only friend she had that could afford to go with her. And I get all that. But none of them came to Alaska. Nobody came to Utah. The only person that came to Utah was my dad. And that was to pick me up so we could move all of my shit to Indiana. So, I mean, no, I mean, my family came to visit me in Alaska, everybody except Courtney. Courtney never came to visit me anywhere. She never came to visit me anywhere once. I had to visit her. Here I was living in Japan, in Alaska, in Utah, and exhausted from those level of moves. I don't think people really get how exhausting it is. With a baby. I had the baby. Her kids were small, but they weren't babies. They weren't even toddlers. They were like, 5, 6, 7. I'm the one with the baby. And here I am trekking around, going from Alaska to California, going from Utah to California. Not her coming to see me. It was always me making the effort. A lot of people get a whole lot of shit twisted. And yeah, it was always me coming to Tennessee to visit. It was my little sister. She did come see me like when my son was 2 weeks old and stayed for like a week or so. She did come to see me. She was the only person. My mom didn't come to see me until my son was almost 6 months old. My mom and dad, I had been raising him completely. Now, Joe's mom came to visit when my son was a few weeks, like 5, 6 weeks old. Whitney came right after he was born, a couple weeks old. But that's it. And it was always me going to Tennessee with a baby. It was always me traveling to see them. I was there when my little sister had both her kids. Courtney didn't come to see me. I had to go to California for her to meet my son. And I get it. She had 2 kids and everything. But, it wouldn't have been much of anything for Charlie to take like a week off and take care of the kids and Courtney fly somewhere. Yeah, it was always me doing the effort, putting in the work, all of it. And, when you look back and you're just like, I'm the only one putting in all this effort. I'm the only one making an effort to have a relationship and be here. And you all want to twist it and act like it's you and it's not. You're just like, I feel completely taken for granted. And, there's just no point in trying to have this relationship, and my parents really, a few years after my divorce was final, back in 2019, like literally at the very, like January 2019, they really fucked me over and hurt me. And I mean, just completely fucked me over. My ex-husband fucked me over even more. Tried to play victim. His family tried to play victim. This was after they pulled guns on me, all kinds of shit. Crazy shit. Just fucking crazy. Just stupid hick shit. That's what I'm saying. Don't, if you're not from the area, don't go visit the South unless you're going to do something specific. Get in and get out. Because it's just a bunch of ignorant hicks for the most part. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's good people anywhere, but they're few and far between than you think. I mean, and they make all this bullshit hay about I'm ride or die. I'm there for the people I love. They were never there for me. They were never there. It was always me making the effort. It was always me reaching out to have the relationship. It was always me. They came to visit me in cool places. Mostly, I think, because they wanted the image of what my life would provide them is my life. And last I checked, Tia and Lenona and all the rest of them, they were never anywhere I was. They don't know the first thing about it. Talk about twisted. But yeah, I mean, it's really sad because, Louisville, I have all these fond memories of childhood with friends and all the rest of it, and field trips and school and friends and all of it. And then, some family memories and all the rest. And then, my family, up until a point, we always had really great Christmases, um, um, Christmas stopped feeling like Christmas with my family when they moved to Greenville. When my mom got her house in Greenville, she tried to rein it back in and, go back to old school ways, but it just never felt the same. And so it probably hasn't really felt like Christmas to me. I mean, don't get me wrong, we had good Christmas and everything. And I had good Christmases with my ex-husband. I spent a lot of Christmases with just him and I. After a certain point, I stopped kind of caring and I started having Christmas more with just him, myself, and my son. Because it's just too much headache. And, yeah, I mean, like, Christmas at 20 wasn't the same at 30. That's being said, they still had nice Christmases and everything, but by the time, 2019 rolled around, I was probably about 35 or so, 34, 35. That was all down the shitter by then. And I honestly haven't had a good Christmas since then. It's probably been almost 8 years, every bit of it. And that's sad because I grew up with really good Christmas. And I did for many, many years. And it just always seems to get ruined. No matter how much effort I put in, no matter what I do. And that's really depressing. And holidays in general. Yeah, I blame a lot of it on not really my sister's ex-husband Charlie. He was actually a pretty cool guy to be around. He was a fun guy. He was definitely, like, he lived up to his name, a good time Charlie. He's definitely somebody you want to party with, somebody you want to be around with on holidays and stuff. He's always had a really good attitude, and he cooks really well, and he always cooks these amazing meals, and he's, let's drink, let's have fun, let's party. He's just a really good time. Um, um, So, I mean, and he's always really friendly and really nice and polite. So, I mean, I don't really blame him because he was always like that around my family, from what I understand. Um, I never really heard many complaints from my parents or my other sister, Whitney. My ex husband, he wasn't ever really around much, and not that I blame him. He's in the military and deployed a lot, but he also didn't want to be around much. He didn't really seem to like my family very much. Um, and that's just sad because my dad took him to Indy 500. My dad took him deep sea, chartered a boat to deep sea fish in Alaska and did all this shit with him. And he didn't really seem to appreciate it or care. My dad tried his best to bond with Joe, and Joe just seemed to take it all for granted. Um, and my little sister's husband, Andrew, he's been dating my little sister since she was 18. Um, Whereas Joe took a lot of things for granted and he almost became spoiled by my family's money, but then didn't appreciate my family. Um, um, and he did use my family to blackmail me during divorce. So I really don't know why my parents ever really entertained him except for just my son's sake, just to be in his life, but at what cost? And as far as Whitney's husband goes, Andrew, I find him to be one of the main culprits as to why my family fractured, because her husband took over the family business, my family's business, her and her husband, mainly him. And he's a fucked up little shithead. He's weird. He's kind of creepy. Um, he's just always been such a self-important, self-victimizing little dick. He kept whining and whining about his parents having been divorced and act like it was the end of the world and everything. And it was just like, I don't know, dude. Because, I mean, he was still doing that shit in his 20s. And his parents divorced when he was like 2. And it's just like, I don't know, dude. It was 20 years ago. Maybe get over it. And then he almost like took my parents on as his parents. And, my family was definitely the more prevalent family rather than his. And now his mom and my mom, I think, were somewhat close. But at times, especially after my sister started having kids and they had grandkids to share. But still, Andrew's always just been kind of a weird little shithead. Always high as a kite. Always. And he's just always been kind of weird and creepy. And, he took a lot of his daddy issues out on my dad. And, my dad almost got put in the position to be a dad to Andrew. And it's just like, what about your real son? I get my older brother did a lot of fucked up shit, but so did my dad. So, I mean, it's just like, pot calling kettle black. Literally. And, at this point, it's just like, you have a real son, you have real kids that you needed to worry about, that we didn't ask for you to be our dad. You made that choice for us. And you're wanting to take complete responsibility for a son-in-law as a parent, but not your own kids. That's a problem. And only because of selfish reasons like maintaining the family business. But, at what cost? And to everybody. And whether literally and financially and legally in a whole lot of other ways, that's not really the main reason why it cost me. It was more emotionally and mentally, and how deeply their life choices fractured the family I had made, and affected my divorce, affected my kid, and how it affected me mentally and emotionally, and somewhat financially, but not in that sense. Um, my family, they're more like, well, we did this and this for you, blah, blah, blah. They lord things over your head. Well, didn't you get money for your birthday and Christmas? And it's just like, those were birthday and Christmas presents. Why are you lording that over my head? So, yeah, I mean, don't ever accept a present from my family. You will pay for it one way or the other. So, I mean, yeah. And it's sad because I was really close to my little sister at times. I wasn't ever really close to my older sister, and she never made the effort. And the thing is like, if she's going to have me frozen in time at 12, well, she's still the older sister. And how much did a 12-year-old have to reach out to an 18-year-old? I mean, like, what? I mean, come off of it. It's just like, Jesus Christ, girl, get a grip. But and it's really showing up bad in Courtney, the effects of my family and all of it. It's really come out in her real bad. It's come out in all of us bad in different ways. And yeah, I mean, I hear these British people talking about people in the South, and I get the humor there, don't get me wrong. And the weird accents and all that, but it just goes to show, you don't really know that much about America and how different other areas of America are from each other, because a Southern American has way less in common with, say, somebody from Chicago than, say, a British person does. You're far more likely to have a whole lot in common with somebody from Chicago or New York or LA or Seattle or something like that. But if you come across somebody that's born and raised in Atlanta, I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying you're real hard pressed to find a whole lot in common. So, and like somebody from Seattle, they don't have anything in common with somebody from Alabama. Nothing. Not even close. Not even kind of. I mean, just not even close. For me, being as world traveled as I am, as educated, as careered as I am, all the rest of it, I went to college in fucking Tokyo. You know what I'm saying? So, while I get it and I understand it, I grew up with it, I truly understand it, all of it, just about, I get it, and sometimes I'm with it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I can, put on a flannel shirt and get on a four-wheeler and crush a beer can on my head and eat, party down at the pig roast with the best of them. I don't really feel like doing that anymore. But, I've had my heyday. And it's just like, I get it. I really do. But at the same time, I'm a liberal. I'm a lot more intellectual. I'm a lot more educated. I have a very intellectual career. I have, even my manufacturing career is very intellectual. And I come by way of that, being a Native American girl in a black world. I mean, that's just how it is. I came by way of that from the minority and not the fucking white trash end. Yeah. And it's Yeah, no. I don't fit in. And, Kentucky is a place where even the black people will openly tell you, I don't know how many black people, no, this is not everybody. This is the exception rather than the rule, but it's more of an exception than you think. But I've had a few black people tell me they don't like other black people, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Because I generally like black people. I don't have anything against a black person, usually. I mean, yeah, if somebody's a mass murderer doing some seriously fucked up crime, yeah, not a big fan. But, I mean, like, the average black person, I don't have any real issue with. And, and, they've said that to me in Louisville. I've had black people tell me, a lot of black people in that area vote for Trump, and they're hardcore Trump supporters. That's mind-blowing to me, because it's just like, how can you say this shit? Because I'm very liberal, and I have black people in the hood telling me they're voting for Trump, and I'm just like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, are you even for yourself? I'm just like, what the fuck? And I just have to bite my tongue, because I prefer not to be political at work too much, because it's just like, oh goddamn, because I'm very not that. And and I'm just like, when I hear this shit come out of their mouths, and I'm like, I'm just like, no, you got it all wrong. But do you even know who's for you? But it is that's a whole other argument. But I just prefer not to go down that rabbit hole, because once you get into a political argument with anybody, it's done. It's not long before shit's flying through the air, in all kinds of ways. But cussing out objects, all of it. You motherfucker, start throwing a shoe at somebody. I mean, regardless, I'm half joking, half not. But I mean, that's what I'm saying. Somebody from Seattle or LA or Chicago, if they met a black person from Louisville and they heard him talking like that, they'd be like, I mean, it would be World War III. Or especially New York. And they'd just be like, what the fuck are you saying, motherfucker? They would just be like, you did not just say that. I mean, it would mind blow a black person from those areas. They would just be like, what the fuck am I listening to? And people don't get, like, somebody like myself that's very liberal, that's world traveled, educated, intellectual. Well, not everybody is well educated or intellectual. Still, most black people in major cities are at the very least intellectual enough to be liberal. And yeah, I mean, it's just, I get eaten alive, because it's all a MAGA country. It's all Trump. It's all Bible bullshit. And I don't really want to get into a religious argument, because lots of liberal African Americans are very religious, and that you're entitled to that. I'm not here to judge anybody for being religious. I'm just personally not. And I work in law. I fully support the First Amendment. You have to. And I fully support somebody's religious rights. I'm just saying, I'm not personally religious. I don't judge other people for being religious. I just don't like it when somebody super religious judges me for not being religious. It's a two-way street. And my mind's made up. You're not converting me. I'm pretty well set. And I have my reasons. That all being said, and it's not for lack of trying, I've tried really hard to try to believe in something higher than myself in that regard. And I do believe in something higher than myself. I believe in the universe. The universe is a proven fact, and the universe is a very big place, and obviously bigger than all of us. So I mean, I do believe in some higher, bigger thing. It's just not wrapped up in God. So, yeah, I feel spiritual in that sense, you know. But yeah, I mean, I get people like myself usually get eaten alive. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of, hardcore, liberal, smart, educated, amazing black people in Louisville. I'm like I said, it's the exception rather than the rule. But trust me, it's more of an exception than you think. It's not like one out of every couple thousand. It's like one out of like every 100 or 200. It's a lot more of an exception than you think in that area. And it's hard to it's baffling. Just like, what the fuck. Um because I just want to sit there and be like, do you understand the civil rights movement? But do you understand? Um but regardless, I've gone way off on a digression and tangent and all that shit. Still, um, yeah, I mean, people like myself get eaten alive unless you're in a city. Louisville is a Democratic city, and it's not like the rest of the state. It's a Democratic area. The mayor is Democratic. A lot of political leaders in the community are Democrats. The governor's a Democrat. So yeah, I mean, there's still a liberal movement in Kentucky. Kentucky's weird that way. But they always manage to vote for Trump or Bush or something. And Trump makes me wish for Bush to be president again, and that's saying something. I mean, I would rather have Bush in office any day than all this crazy Trump shit. It's just insane. It's embarrassing. I don't know how Republicans, like real Republicans, because Bush League Republicans are like real Republicans. Sure, they cater to the right wing a little, but not this Trump shit. And I mean, I would rather have Bush back. You know what I'm saying? Like, at least he was like, ain't nothing but a family thing politics. It was, I mean, I can handle like a politician being a politician. Trump is not a politician. Trump is insane. I mean, politician, you know what you're getting. Trump is just a wild card. And I would think like real Republicans would be kind of embarrassed. I think they would be like, this is not what it's about at all. They must read the news every day and just be like, oh, what did he say? Like he didn't, oh, just shut him up, muzzle him. But I can respect an actual Republican. A Trump supporter and Trump, I just can't. I don't respect it. I can respect somebody having a different viewpoint. I can't respect just outright fucking tyrants. It's just, so, I mean, yeah. And the South in general has become very radicalized in Trump. Republicans aren't red states anymore. All those Trump and MAGA, they're red flags. Is what they are. They went from being red to red flag. So, yeah. That's a problem. So yeah, it's just so toxic, and America and the political scene has become so toxic, and it's just real prevalent and polarized in the South. And sure, say Seattle or LA or New York or all of Northeast and all of the West Coast and Chicago, yeah, all those areas are very Democratic, and it is polarized towards the Democrats. But how many, I mean, most Democrats aren't like hardcore left wing, cater to the hardcore left wing, radicalized, sure, there's a few of them, but they're not radicalized like the right is. And it's scary. It's scary. And everybody's playing right into Trump's hands, divide and conquer. And people need to be thinking about what's the same rather than what's different, and how differences make you just merely unique, not an enemy. And I think that's the whole point, because even in the South, you're all different. And sure, one Southerner to another might have a lot of empathy. But then, I'm from the South. My whole family's from the South. We're all from Kentucky. And in southern Indiana. But, I mean, it's all Kentucky. It's called Kentuckiana in that area where I grew up. And, I spent plenty of time in Eastern Kentucky, trust me, growing up. And, I don't see anybody having any empathy for me. And it's just like, just because, I don't wear a MAGA hat and fly a Trump flag around means nothing. So, yeah. On that note, I got shithead calling me, so yeah, I should probably head off. It's been too long of a video anyways. I just have a lot on my mind. I'm getting ready to write an essay as a follow-up to Bitch Perfect. I wrote that essay, Bitch Perfect, Depression and Anxiety. And it's been 11 years since, almost. We're coming up on the 11-year anniversary since I wrote it. And a lot has happened in the last 11 years. And I've decided to write a follow-up essay to that, as to how I feel about what I wrote and where I'm at now and how I feel. I would batten down the hatches. So, just a fair warning. I don't know how long it's going to take me to write. I wrote Bitch Perfect in like a couple days, and I wrote it out real fast, and it just took a couple days to edit. This, I'm going to be a lot more mindful. Not that I wasn't mindful there. I feel like I did write something very profound. Do I feel the same ways? Yes and no. A lot has changed. I'm a very different person. So I will be copywriting it. It's the other one's under copyright as well, just so everybody knows. So, fair warning. And it's not about singular phrases. It's about when somebody comes at me starting to quote multiple singular phrases from the essay, because the entire body of work is about my personal experience with mental health as a whole. And in the entire body of work is my writing and is copyrighted. So, yeah, when somebody starts coming at me with because they had a lot of catchy little phrases in the essay. I'm going to try to refrain from that now. and I didn't do it on purpose to have catchphrases. It wasn't, it was to, because I didn't market it. I didn't monetize the essay at all. I didn't sell it. I didn't do any of that. It wasn't about that. It was, I didn't share it with the mass market. I shared it with like friends and family, you know, so, I mean, it was public, but I wasn't really sharing it with anybody, you know, it, nobody could have really related to it except unless you knew me at the time. And but to see how much it led to me being taken advantage of was really disappointing. It was been traumatizing. It's been super tragic. And for what? Because what I'm about to hand to you all is a report card, and you can go ahead and just count it as an F. You all failed too, and that's what you needed to understand. All right, on that note, I hope at the very least this made you think. Peace.